She wiped down the same table for the third time that evening, her fingers numb from the cold seeping through the cracked window. Outside, snow fell like ash over Maple Ridge. Inside the cafe, the radiator coughed out weak heat. Lena Carter glanced at the clock. 11:50. 10 more minutes, and she could lock up. Then the door opened. A man stepped inside, his clothes layered in grime, his face hidden beneath a matted beard. He smelled of rain and something deeper, something Lena recognized from her own childhood. He stood near the entrance, hesitant, as if waiting to be thrown out. This is Elmram Stories, where African folktales meet real-life lessons that will change how you see the world. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. Lena did not flinch. She did not call the police or pretend to be busy. She walked toward him, her voice soft. "Sit anywhere you like." The man blinked. No one had spoken to him like that in months. He shuffled to a corner booth, the one farthest from the window, and sat with his hands folded on the table. Lena brought him water without asking. She returned moments later with a bowl of beef stew, still steaming, and 2 thick slices of bread. She set it down gently. "Eat," she said. "It's fresh." He stared at the food as if it might vanish. Then he picked up the spoon and ate slowly, carefully, like a man who had forgotten what warmth tasted like. Lena went back to her work. She did not hover. She did not ask questions. She let him be. The man's name was Arthur Whitmore, though Lena would not learn that until much later. Arthur was not homeless. He was one of the richest men in the country. He owned hotels, factories, shipping lines. His name appeared in newspapers beside words like mogul and empire. But none of that mattered now. Not when the doctors had given him 4 months to live. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Inoperable. Final. Arthur had spent his life building walls. Walls of money. Walls of power. Walls that kept people at a distance. But now, standing at the edge of death, he realized those walls had left him completely alone. His children, Julian and Vivian, circled him like hawks. They smiled when they visited, but their eyes were always on the clock. They asked about his health, but what they really wanted to know was when. When would he sign? When would he die? When would they finally get what they believed they were owed? Arthur had tested them. He pretended to be confused, forgetful. He asked them questions about their childhood, their dreams, their memories of their mother. Julian checked his phone. Vivian sighed and said she had a meeting. Neither of them stayed longer than 20 minutes. They kissed his forehead and left him in that enormous house, surrounded by silence and expensive furniture that no one sat on. So Arthur decided to run his own test. He wanted to see if kindness still existed in the world, or if everything had become a transaction. He dressed in rags he bought from a second-hand store. He walked the streets of Maple Ridge, a city he owned half of but had never truly seen. He sat on benches. He asked for directions. He stood outside restaurants and waited. No one helped him. Security guards waved him away. Pedestrians crossed the street to avoid him. A woman spat near his feet and called him a disgrace. Arthur felt something crack inside him. Not anger. Something colder. Confirmation. The world had become exactly what he feared. And then he walked into Lena's cafe. She had not looked at him with pity. She had not looked at him with disgust. She had looked at him the way you look at a person. That was all. But it was everything. When Arthur finished eating, he reached into his coat and pulled out a crumpled $10 bill. It was all he had brought with him. He placed it on the table and stood to leave. Lena noticed. She walked over, picked up the bill, and held it out to him. "Keep it," she said quietly. "You might need it more than I do." Arthur stared at her. "You don't know me." "I don't need to," Lena replied. "Around here, you don't pay for kindness." Arthur left the cafe that night and stood in the falling snow for a long time. He thought about his children. He thought about his empire. He thought about the woman who had given him something no amount of money could buy. Respect. Dignity. Humanity. 3 days later, Arthur called his attorney. "I want to change my will," he said. The attorney, a man named Gregory Monroe, had worked for the Whitmore family for 30 years. He sighed. "Arthur, we've been over this. Julian and Vivian are your only heirs. If you cut them out, there will be lawsuits. Chaos." "I don't care," Arthur said. "I want everything to go to someone else." "Who?" Arthur told him about the cafe, about the waitress, about the $10 bill. Gregory was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Arthur, you don't even know her full name." "Find her," Arthur said, "and make it airtight. I want trusts. I want legal shields. I want her protected from everything that's coming. Gregory tried to argue, but Arthur Whitmore had not built an empire by listening to other people's doubts. The will was rewritten. Lena Carter, a woman who had no idea she had just become the center of a storm, was named the sole beneficiary of the Whitmore fortune. Arthur died 6 weeks later, alone in his bed, with no one holding his hand. Julian and Vivian were not there. They were at a charity gala, smiling for cameras. They found out about his death from a text message sent by the housekeeper. The funeral was small. The will reading was not. Julian Whitmore sat in the leather chair his father had once occupied and felt nothing. No grief. No regret. Just impatience. Across from him, Vivian checked her reflection in a compact mirror, adjusting the black dress she had bought that morning. Expensive. Elegant. Appropriate for mourning a man she had not loved in years. Gregory Monroe entered the room carrying a folder so thick it seemed to contain the weight of an entire life. He set it on the table and looked at them both with something close to pity. "Let's get this over with," Julian said. He leaned back, already imagining which properties he would sell first. The hotels in Prague, the shipping contracts in Singapore. He would modernize, rebrand, make the Whitmore name his own. Gregory opened the folder. "Your father's estate is valued at approximately $3.2 billion. Vivian smiled. Julian nodded. This was expected. Gregory continued. However, the entirety of that estate has been left to a single beneficiary. Julian frowned. "What do you mean, single beneficiary?" "Split it down the middle. Vivian and I will handle the rest." "No," Gregory said carefully. "You misunderstand. Neither of you are named in the will." The room went silent. Vivian's compact snapped shut. Julian sat forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Repeat that." Gregory slid a document across the table. "Your father left everything to a woman named Lena Marie Carter. She is a waitress at a cafe in Maple Ridge. She has no prior relationship to your family. She was not informed of this decision, and the will is legally binding." Vivian laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. "This is a joke." He was senile. Sick. "You let a dying man sign away billions to some random woman." "Your father was of sound mind when he made this decision," Gregory said. "He was evaluated by 3 independent physicians. He knew exactly what he was doing." Julian stood so quickly his chair fell backward. "We'll contest it. We'll bury her in legal fees until she gives it back." Gregory looked at him with the steady gaze of a man who had already anticipated this moment. "Your father expected that. He placed the inheritance in an irrevocable trust. He appointed an independent board of trustees. He included severability clauses, no contest provisions, and legal defenses that would take you years to challenge. And even if you tried, you would lose. He made sure of that." Vivian's hands trembled. "Why? Why would he do this?" Gregory closed the folder. "Because she gave him something neither of you ever did." Julian's jaw tightened. "And what's that?" "Kindness," Gregory said, without expecting anything in return. The news broke 3 days later. The media called it the biggest inheritance scandal in modern history. Reporters camped outside Lena's apartment. Cameras followed her to work. Strangers stopped her on the street, some begging for money, others accusing her of manipulation. The cafe where she worked was flooded with customers who did not care about coffee. They wanted to see the woman who had stolen a fortune. Lena did not understand. She sat in a small office with Gregory Monroe and stared at the papers he had placed in front of her. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "I met him once. I gave him soup. That's all." "That was enough," Gregory replied. "Arthur Whitmore spent his final months searching for proof that people could still be good. You were the only one who passed his test." Lena shook her head. "I don't want this. I didn't ask for it." "I know," Gregory said gently. "But it's yours. And you need to decide what to do with it. Because Julian and Vivian will not stop. They will fight. They will threaten. They will try to destroy you." Lena looked out the window. She thought about the nights she had gone to bed hungry. The eviction notices. The electricity shut off in winter. The choice between rent and medicine. She had survived all of it by holding on to one belief. That kindness mattered. That doing the right thing, even when no one was watching, meant something. She turned back to Gregory. "What did he want me to do with it?" Gregory smiled for the first time. "He didn't tell you what to do. He trusted you to figure it out." Julian hired private investigators. They dug into Lena's life, searching for anything they could use. A criminal record, a scandal, A secret. They found nothing. Lena Carter had no debts. No enemies. No skeletons. She was exactly what she appeared to be. Ordinary. Honest. Unremarkable in every way except one. She had been kind when it cost her nothing and gained her nothing. Vivian tried a different approach. She showed up at Lena's apartment with a check for $10 million. Take it, Vivian said. Walk away. You'll never have to work again. And we'll leave you alone. Lena looked at the check. Then she looked at Vivian. Your father didn't leave me this money because I needed it. He left it because he wanted to prove something. Prove what? Vivian snapped. That people like you would never understand people like me. Vivian tore up the check and left. The trustees met with Lena every week. They explained the businesses, the investments, the properties scattered across 4 continents. Lena listened. She asked questions. She learned. And slowly, carefully, she began to make decisions. She did not sell the empire. She did not cash out and disappear. She rebuilt it. But this time, she rebuilt it her way. She raised wages for workers in the factories. She turned empty hotels into housing for displaced families. She funded scholarships for children who looked like her, who had grown up the way she had. Hungry, invisible, told they did not matter. Julian watched from a distance, furious and powerless. Vivian stopped returning calls. And Lena Carter, the waitress who had offered soup to a stranger, became something no one expected. Not a mogul, not a celebrity, but something rarer. A billionaire with a conscience. The courtroom smelled of old wood and expensive cologne. Julian sat at the plaintiff's table, his lawyer beside him, a man who charged $1,500 an hour and spoke in long sentences that meant nothing. Across the aisle, Lena sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple blue dress. No jewelry. No designer labels. She looked exactly like what she was. A woman who had never wanted any of this. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The case had been in motion for 8 months. Julian had filed 17 motions. He had called Arthur Whitmore mentally incompetent. He had accused Lena of elder abuse, manipulation, and fraud. He had dragged her name through every newspaper and courtroom in the state. And every single time, the case had been thrown out. But Julian would not stop. He could not stop. Because stopping meant admitting the truth. That his father had chosen a stranger over his own blood. And that choice had been deliberate. The judge looked tired. He had read every document, reviewed every deposition, listened to every argument. And now, finally, he spoke. Mr. Whitmore, I have reviewed your claims. And I find no legal basis to overturn your father's will. The inheritance stands. This case is dismissed. Julian did not move. His lawyer whispered something, but Julian did not hear it. He stared at Lena, and for the first time, she stared back. There was no anger in her eyes. No triumph. Only something that looked like sadness. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved toward Lena's face. She did not run. She stopped, looked directly into the lens, and spoke. Arthur Whitmore did not leave me his fortune because I was special. He left it because I treated him like he mattered. That's all. And if that's enough to change a will, maybe we should all think about how we treat people when there's nothing to gain. The clip went viral. Within hours, it had been shared millions of times. People debated it, argued about it. Some called her a saint. Others called her a thief. But everyone was talking. And in that noise, something unexpected began to happen. People started paying attention to what Lena was actually doing with the money. She had quietly purchased the building where she used to live. The one with broken elevators and rats in the walls. She renovated it, lowered the rent, hired local workers to manage it. She bought the cafe where she had worked and turned it into a training center for young people who needed jobs. She paid them fair wages, gave them health insurance, treated them the way she had always wished someone would treat her. She did not hold press conferences. She did not post about her charity on social media. She simply worked, quietly, relentlessly. And the empire that Arthur Whitmore had built on ruthless efficiency and cold calculation began to transform into something else. Something softer. Something human. Julian watched all of it from his apartment. The apartment he had bought with money from his mother's side of the family. The apartment that was nice, but not extraordinary. He had hired forensic accountants to find loopholes. They found none. He had hired investigators to follow Lena. They reported back that she worked 16-hour days and lived in a modest 2-bedroom house. He had waited for her to crack, to become greedy. to prove that she was just like everyone else. But she never did. One night, Julian sat alone in the dark and opened a drawer he had not touched in years. Inside was a letter. His father had written it 6 months before he died. Julian had never opened it. He had assumed it was another lecture. Another disappointment. But now, with nothing left to lose, he tore the envelope open. The letter was short. It said, "Julian, I gave you everything except a reason to care about anyone but yourself. I failed you. I made you hollow. I hope one day you understand that wealth without character is just emptiness with a price tag. I love you, but I do not like who you became. And I take responsibility for that. Goodbye." Julian read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it back in the drawer. He did not cry. He had not cried since he was 7 years old. But something inside him shifted. Something small. Something he did not yet have a name for. Vivian had moved to London. She had married a banker and stopped using the Whitmore name. She did not speak to Julian anymore. She did not speak to anyone from her old life. She had decided that if she could not have the fortune, she would simply pretend it had never existed. It was easier that way. Lena stood on the balcony of the Whitmore estate, the house that was now legally hers, though she rarely stayed there. She looked out over the city. The lights stretched endlessly. Somewhere down there, people were struggling, working 2 jobs, choosing between medicine and food. She had been one of them, and now she had the power to change that. Not for everyone. She was not naive, but for some, and some was better than none. She thought about Arthur, the man who had walked into her cafe and tested the world one last time. She wished she could thank him, not for the money, but for trusting her with it, for believing that kindness was not weakness, that compassion was not foolishness, that a person's worth was not measured by their wealth, but by their willingness to see others as human. The final twist was this. Arthur Whitmore had not been testing the world. He had been testing himself. He had spent his entire life believing that money was the only thing that mattered. And in his final days, a waitress who earned $9 an hour had proven him wrong. She had given him something his billions never could. Hope. And in return, he had given her the chance to prove that goodness, when given power, does not corrupt. It heals. Lena turned away from the view and went back inside. There was work to do. There was always work to do. True wealth is not counted in dollars, but in the lives we touch when no one is watching. Arthur Whitmore learned too late that love cannot be inherited and respect cannot be bought. But in his final act, he gave the world a reminder. That kindness is never wasted. That character reveals itself not in moments of comfort, but in moments of choice. Lena did not seek fortune. She sought nothing at all. And that is precisely why she deserved it. In a world obsessed with taking, she gave freely. And in doing so, she proved that the richest inheritance we can leave behind is not money. It is the memory of how we made people feel. Compassion is currency. Humanity is wealth. And every act of kindness plants seeds we may never see grow. Like, subscribe, share, and comment the lesson you learned.